When operations have fractions involving variables, we can somehow technically combine terms that are not like terms. That means terms that do not have the same variable with the same exponent. And even though this may not seem useful at the moment, and probably not even at the entire course of Algebra 1, this technique might come in handy in Algebra 2 or Geometry or even harder math courses. So let's learn how can we combine not like terms using fractions. And then again, this combine is in quotation marks. So for example, here in x over 4 plus 7x squared over 10, this is an addition of fractions that we learned in basic algebra lesson 1.3. So let's use the formula from basic algebra. And this formula started with a multiplication of the denominator. So 4 times 10, and let's put our calculations rectangle. 4 times 10 is just 40, and that's the denominator of our fraction. After we multiply the denominators, we start with the cross multiplication. So we go first with x times 10, and x times 10, which you can just write it as 10x. And this goes as the first part of the numerator. Then we have to pay attention that this is an addition. So we need to take the addition sign and put it into our fraction. And finally, the other cross multiplication, which is 4 times 7x squared. Remember, we multiply numbers with numbers and letters with letters. So 4 times 7 is 28. We only have x squared, so 28x squared. And this is how we can combine, one more time in quotation mark, terms that are not like terms. And then again, this may not seem useful at the moment, but it may help us in future math lessons. And then again, you can review the procedure of addition and subtraction of fractions in basic algebra course lessons 1.3 and 1.4. But let's do it one more time, especially in a situation like this, that we have x in the denominator. We have 4x minus 6 divided by x. That x in the denominator is problematic. It's going to make things harder. And one more time, especially when we get to harder math, to geometry, to algebra, to polynomials, to calculus, those x's in the denominator are going to be a problem. So by combining these two fractions, it will help us to overcome that problem. So let's learn at the moment, since we are in a unit about fractions, let's learn how to combine those fractions. We have a subtraction here, 4x minus 6 over x. Then again, remember, this 4x is not a fraction. Technically, it's not a fraction, but we can turn it into a fraction by using the rule of dividing it by 1. Every time that we don't have a fraction, we can turn it into a fraction by writing a 1 in the denominator. So now this is 4x over 1, and now this is a fraction. And because it is a fraction, we can apply the rule of subtraction of fractions, for which we start multiplying the denominators, which is 1 times x, but 1 times x is just x, and that's our denominator. And then we move on to the cross multiplication, which is 4 times x, 4x times x. Remember, multiply letters with letters, numbers with numbers, and apply the multiplication of exponents that we learned in lesson 2.2 of this unit. This turns into 4x squared. And then we go with the other cross multiplication. But let's not forget this is a subtraction. So we copy the subtraction sign in the middle, and the other cross multiplication is 1 times 6. 1 times 6, well, this is just 6, and it goes into our fraction. So 4x minus 6 over x, we can turn it into 4x squared minus 6 divided by x. Then again, it actually seems more complicated than what we had at the beginning, and the x is still in the denominator. But remembering this technique will come in handy in future lessons and future courses.